The auditorium was silent, not the kind of silence that felt empty, but the kind that held weight, like the whole room had collectively forgotten how to breathe. Hundreds of eyes were locked onto the stage, where two of the most enigmatic figures of our time stood side by side. Elon Musk, the billionaire innovator with a mind that built rockets, electric cars, and dreams of Mars. Keanu Reeves, the actor whose soul carried stories of pain, perseverance, and a heart deeper than any script could capture. They were here for a panel discussion, one that was supposed to be about technology, the future of AI, and storytelling in cinema. But no one in the room had expected what happened next. In just 5 seconds, Elon Musk did something so profound, so unexpected, that Keanu Reeves, a man who had seen life's darkest and brightest moments, was left speechless. His breath hitched, his usually calm demeanor cracked for a fleeting second. Because in those 5 seconds, Musk revealed something that would change the way Keanu and the entire world looked at him forever. And it all started with a folded piece of paper. Keanu's eyes flickered to the small, folded piece of paper in Elon's hand. It was old, the edges slightly worn, as if it had been carried around for years. Elon held it up between his fingers and stared at Keanu for a long moment. "This," Elon said, his voice unusually soft, "changed the course of my life." The audience leaned in. Even the moderators, who were prepared for a deep discussion on AI and filmmaking, were caught off guard. This was unscripted. This was raw. Keanu, ever the composed soul, studied Elon's face. "What is it?" he finally asked. Elon didn't answer right away. Instead, he unfolded the paper with a gentleness that felt almost sacred. And when he held it up for Keanu to see, the actor's breath hitched. His eyes widened, the calm mask he wore slipping just a little. Because what he saw was his own handwriting. A quote written in ink that had slightly faded over time. "Sometimes the person you've become is the person you once needed the most." Keanu blinked. His mind raced. He recognized the words instantly. It was something he had scribbled in an interview over a decade ago when asked about his personal philosophy. He had never thought about it again. But there it was. In Elon Musk's hands, a piece of his past held with a reverence he didn't expect. The room was silent, the air electric. And then Elon spoke. "You don't know this, Keanu, but this quote saved my life." Keanu felt something shift in the air. The weight of Elon's words settled deep into his chest. For years he had been admired for his humility, his kindness, his quiet wisdom. But never, not in all his travels, not in all his conversations, had he expected that Elon Musk, a man known for building rockets and reshaping the world, would say something like this to him. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "How?" Elon exhaled, gripping the paper just a little tighter, as if afraid it might slip away. "Years ago, before Tesla was what it is today, before SpaceX proved everyone wrong, I was at my breaking point. The audience was utterly still. Even those who had come expecting business talk, expecting cold numbers and futuristic predictions, were now holding their breath. I had just come out of a series of failures," Elon continued, his voice quieter than before. "Tesla was drowning in debt. SpaceX had 3 rocket failures in a row. I had poured everything I had into those dreams, everything. And yet, the world was laughing at me, saying I was crazy, that I would fail." Keanu's gaze never wavered. Elon's eyes darkened as if remembering a time when shadows loomed closer than light. "It got to the point where I asked myself, what's the point of all this? Why keep going when the world keeps knocking you down?" He looked down at the paper. "And then, one night, I came across this quote." He paused, his fingers brushing over the ink as if it held some kind of magic. Keanu swallowed. He had no idea that words he had barely remembered writing had found their way into the hands of one of the most influential minds in the world, at a moment when he needed them most. Elon took a deep breath and looked up. "Keanu, you once said, sometimes the person you've become is the person you once needed the most." And that night I realized I had to become that person, the kid who dreamed of space, the boy who wanted to build a better future. He needed me. I couldn't quit on him. The room was heavy with emotion. Some in the audience were blinking back tears. Even the hardest skeptics, those who had dismissed Elon as just another billionaire with big ideas, now saw something else. Vulnerability, humanity, the weight of purpose. Keanu let out a slow breath, nodding. "And you didn't quit." Elon's lips curved into a small, almost tired smile. Number. Because in that moment I realized that every failure, every doubt, every hardship was making me into the person I needed to be. The room erupted into applause, but Keanu wasn't clapping. He was watching Elon because something still wasn't adding up. There was something more, something Elon wasn't saying. And then Keanu asked the question that changed everything. "Elon, why did you bring this up now? Why here, in front of all these people?" Elon's smile faded. He hesitated. And then he said something that sent a chill down Keanu's spine, something that made the entire room go silent again. Elon lowered his gaze for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Then he lifted his eyes to Keanu, and what he said next sent a ripple through the entire auditorium. "Because I know what you're planning to do." A stunned hush fell over the crowd. Keanu's eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean?" His voice was steady, but there was a flicker of something, disbelief, maybe even fear, in his eyes. Elon leaned forward, the weight of his words pressing between them. "You're thinking about walking away, aren't you? Leaving everything behind?" The audience collectively inhaled. Keanu didn't respond, but his silence said everything. Elon nodded as if he had just confirmed something. "You've been carrying too much for too long. The losses, the grief, the pressure of always being the good guy. The world keeps taking pieces of you, and you're running out of pieces to give." Keanu's jaw tightened. His fingers curled slightly, as if gripping onto something unseen. He hadn't told anyone, not a single soul. And yet, somehow, Elon knew. The billionaire's voice softened. "Keanu, I recognize the look in your eyes, because I've seen it in the mirror." He held up the old folded paper once more. "I know what it feels like to stand at the edge and wonder if you should step away, to question whether the world even deserves what you have left to give." Keanu swallowed hard. His usually composed demeanor was slipping. The room was dead silent. Then Elon leaned in just slightly, his next words barely above a whisper. "But what if the person you've become is still needed?" Keanu closed his eyes for the briefest second. Elon let the words hang in the air. "You said that sometimes we become the person we once needed. But maybe there's someone out there, right now, who needs you." A single tear slipped down someone's cheek in the front row. Elon continued, his voice steady, unwavering. "Maybe you think your story is done, that you've given all you can. But what if, just like that night when I needed this quote, someone, somewhere, is waiting for you to keep going?" Keanu exhaled slowly, his hands pressing together, as if grounding himself. The weight of the moment was immense. The world had seen Keanu Reeves as unshakable, invincible even. But right now, he wasn't Neo, or John Wick, or the Internet's beloved, wholesome king. Right now, he was a man standing at the edge of something unseen, and Elon Musk had just reached out a hand. The silence stretched, and then Keanu did something no one expected. He reached into his own pocket. The crowd watched as he pulled out something small, something that had been folded and refolded so many times the edges were nearly frayed. He held it up for Elon to see, and Elon's eyes widened, because written on the worn slip of paper in the same ink-faded scrawl was a quote, Elon Musk's quote. From years ago, the same quote that had once saved him. Keanu's voice was quiet, but strong. "I guess that makes two of us." A stunned gasp echoed through the audience. And then Elon laughed, not a small chuckle, but a full, genuine, soul-deep laugh. Keanu grinned, because at that moment they both knew neither of them were standing at the edge alone, and neither of them were done yet. Elon's laughter faded into a knowing smile, and Keanu mirrored it. The energy in the room had shifted. What had started as a simple panel discussion had turned into something far greater, a moment of raw human connection witnessed by thousands that would soon spread across the world. But then, a voice from the audience shattered the moment. "You both talk about purpose and meaning. But what about the rest of us?" The question rang out like a challenge. The crowd turned to look at the man who had spoken. He was young, maybe in his late 20s, with tired eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of struggles no one else could see. Keanu and Elon both turned toward him. The man's voice trembled slightly, but he kept going. "It's easy for you two. You've made it. You have wealth, influence. But what about people like me? Like us?" He gestured to the crowd. "What if we don't have a quote that saves us? What if we don't know why we should keep going?" A murmur spread through the auditorium. He wasn't the only one feeling this way. Keanu took a slow breath. This was it, the real question, the one that so many people carried in their hearts but never dared to ask out loud. Elon, for once, didn't have an immediate answer. His sharp, problem-solving mind was trained to fix things, to build rockets, to change industries. But this wasn't about innovation. It was about something deeper. Keanu looked at the young man for a long moment before he finally spoke. "You're right," he said softly. "Not everyone has a moment that saves them. And sometimes life doesn't give you a reason to keep going." The room was dead silent. And then Keanu stood up, slowly, deliberately. The audience tensed, sensing something important was about to happen. He took the folded slip of paper with Elon's old quote on it, held it between his fingers, and tore it in half. Gasps, Elon's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. Keanu stepped closer to the edge of the stage, looking directly at the young man who had spoken. "Because sometimes," he continued, "you have to create your own reason." The young man's breath hitched. Keanu held out the torn paper. This is just ink on a page. It meant something because Elon chose to make it mean something, just like I did, just like you can." A pause. Then Keanu looked out at the crowd. "The world isn't going to hand you a reason. You have to build it. You have to decide that you matter, that your story isn't over." Elon nodded, his voice cutting through the silence. "And sometimes the people who change the world the most are the ones who once thought they had no place in it." The young man's eyes glistened. Keanu tossed the torn halves of paper into the air. They fluttered down like feathers, carrying with them a message that no one in that room would ever forget. And then, as if the universe itself had scripted it, someone in the audience stood up, then another, and another, until the entire auditorium was on their feet. No applause, no cheering, just a silent, powerful understanding. Because in that moment, every single person in that room realized they were the reason. The silence in the auditorium was no longer empty. It was alive. It carried the weight of unspoken struggles, of dreams abandoned too soon, of people who had spent years believing they were just another face in the crowd. And yet, here they were, standing. Keanu let his gaze travel across the sea of people, his face unreadable, his hands relaxed at his sides. Elon, too, remained still, watching, waiting. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, the young man who had spoken stepped forward. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was clear. "If we have to build our own reasons, where do we start?" Keanu's lips parted slightly, not in surprise, but in recognition. This was the same question he had once asked himself, the same question Elon had faced when his rockets failed. When the world doubted him, Elon and Keanu exchanged a glance. Then Elon spoke. With the next 5 seconds, the young man blinked. "What?" Elon stepped closer. "You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a grand plan or a perfect reason. You just need to make it through the next 5 seconds. Keanu nodded. Then the next 5 after that, and the next. Elon's voice was calm, steady. Until one day you realize you've built something. The young man swallowed hard. "And what if I fail?" Keanu smiled, a small, knowing smile, one that carried the weight of every loss, every setback, every moment of doubt he had ever faced. "Then you start again." The young man exhaled sharply, as if something inside him had cracked open. And then he nodded. Something in the room shifted. Because it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of them. The standing crowd had begun as an unconscious movement, a silent acknowledgement of something they hadn't been able to name. But now it was a decision. A woman near the front wiped her eyes and whispered, 5 seconds. A man a few rows back echoed, then the next 5. And just like that, a ripple spread through the audience. 5 seconds. Then the next. Then the next. It was no longer just a phrase. It was a promise. And then someone in the audience began to clap. Then another and another. Until the room exploded into thunderous applause. But this wasn't polite, rehearsed clapping. This was something else. This was a heartbeat, a pulse, a revolution being born in real time. Keanu and Elon stood side by side, watching as an entire room of strangers came alive with the realization that they had the power to keep going. And then Elon reached into his pocket. Keanu turned, eyebrows slightly raised, as Elon pulled out something small, another folded piece of paper. The audience, still standing, went dead silent once more. Keanu's voice was barely above a whisper. "Elon, what is that?" Elon glanced at the paper in his hands, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he unfolded it, and when Keanu saw what was written there, his breath hitched, because this time it wasn't a quote. It was a name, and that name would change everything. Keanu stared at the name on the paper, his heartbeat quickening. The audience didn't dare breathe. Something was happening. Keanu's lips parted slightly as he whispered the name. "Christopher." Elon nodded, his expression unreadable. Keanu's hands curled into fists. He took a slow, measured breath, trying to process what he was seeing. "Why do you have this?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken emotions. Elon hesitated just for a second. Then, carefully, deliberately, he held out the paper for Keanu to take. Keanu didn't move, because Christopher wasn't just a name. It was his past. It was his pain. And more than anything, it was his greatest loss. The audience had no idea what was happening, but they could feel it. A storm was building, an emotional hurricane, silent but unstoppable. Keanu's voice was steady, but there was something raw beneath it. "Where did you get this?" Elon took a slow breath. "I've known about him for a long time, Keanu." His voice was softer now. "I just never thought this was the right moment to tell you." Keanu swallowed hard, because Christopher was his unborn daughter, the child he had lost before she ever had a chance to live. Keanu's world blurred for a second. The edges of the moment softened, warped. Memories surged through him, memories he had spent years locking away. The day he found out he would be a father, the day it was all taken away. The day he stood over a tiny unmarked grave, wondering if the universe was punishing him. And now, here was Elon Musk, standing in front of him, holding her name. The world around them disappeared. The audience, the stage, the lights, it was just them. Keanu's voice was hoarse. "Why?" Elon exhaled slowly. "Because, Keanu, you once saved my life." He looked down at the slip of paper. "And I think it's time I returned the favor." Keanu felt something crack deep inside him. And then Elon said something that changed everything, something that made Keanu's breath hitch, something that no one in that room could have predicted. He said, "Christopher wasn't just your daughter's name." The words hit Keanu like a tidal wave. His world tilted. His pulse roared. And for the first time in years, Keanu Reeves was truly, completely speechless. Keanu's breath was shallow. His fingers twitched at his sides, his body locked in place, as if moving might make the moment too real. Christopher wasn't just his daughter's name? His mind raced, piecing together possibilities that didn't make sense. And yet, standing before him, Elon Musk's face was calm, but his eyes carried something deeper, something heavy. Keanu took a slow, measured step forward. The silence in the room was suffocating. "What do you mean?" His voice was hoarse, unsteady, two things Keanu Reeves never was. Elon inhaled sharply, then let it out, his grip tightening around the paper. He wasn't sure how to say this, but there was no turning back now. "The name Christopher," Elon said slowly, "wasn't just tied to you." His eyes locked onto Keanu's. "It was tied to me." A shiver ran down Keanu's spine. The world around them. The audience, the cameras, the flashing lights, blurred into nothing. "What the hell are you talking about, Elon?" Elon hesitated. Then he handed Keanu the paper. Keanu took it, his fingers trembling slightly as he unfolded it. There, beneath the name Christopher, was something else. A date, and when Keanu saw it, his heart stopped, because he knew that date. It was the day his daughter was supposed to be born, and underneath it, in Elon's neat, calculated handwriting, was an address. Keanu's pulse thundered in his ears. He looked up at Elon, his voice shaking. "Why do you have this?" Elon's gaze was unwavering. "Because, Keanu, I think we were supposed to find each other." Keanu's stomach twisted. And then Elon said the words that shattered everything. "Christopher wasn't just your child. Christopher was mine, too." The room spun. The audience gasped. And for the first time in his life, Keanu Reeves felt like the universe had just rewritten itself around him. Keanu's mind fractured into 1,000 unspoken questions. His chest tightened, his pulse a wild drumbeat in his ears. Christopher was mine, too. Elon's words echoed, looping over and over in Keanu's mind, each repetition making less sense than the last. The paper in his hand felt heavier now. The date, the name, the address, they weren't just coincidences, they were threads. Threads that had been tied together long before this moment, before either of them had realized they were tangled in the same story. Keanu shook his head, trying to steady himself. "Elon, that's impossible." Elon's lips pressed into a tight line. "No, Keanu." His voice was measured but filled with something rare, something almost fragile. "I wish it were." Keanu staggered back a step. "No." His voice was firm, but his hands were shaking, because deep down he knew Elon wasn't lying. He just didn't understand how. Keanu's breath hitched. "Explain." Elon inhaled sharply. "Not here." He glanced around the packed auditorium. Cameras, thousands of eyes, live streams broadcasting this moment to the entire world. "No," Keanu snapped. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It wasn't composed, because this wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was his life unraveling in real time. "Tell me. Right. Now." Elon hesitated. But then he did something no one expected. He reached into his pocket, pulled out another folded paper, and handed it to Keanu. Keanu hesitated. His gut screamed at him not to take it, but his hands, they acted on their own. He unfolded the paper, and when he saw what was inside, the air was knocked from his lungs, because it wasn't just words. It was a photo. And in that photo was a woman Keanu had loved, a woman who had been gone for over 2 decades. His voice broke. "Jennifer?" Elon nodded, and then, in the softest, most earth-shattering voice imaginable, he said, "Keanu, we need to talk about Jennifer Syme." The world spun. The audience held its breath, and Keanu felt the ground disappear beneath him. Keanu stood there, the weight of the moment sinking in like 1,000 heavy stones pressing down on his chest. He stared at the photo in his hand, the woman's face staring back at him, Jennifer Syme. His heart felt like it was being pulled in 2 directions. She had been his love, his soulmate, the one who never got to live the life they had imagined together. They had shared hopes, dreams, and one very real tragedy, the loss of their daughter, Christopher. He had never let go of that pain, the kind of grief that becomes part of your very being. But now, this. The paper was a reminder, a whisper from the past, a part of his life that he thought was locked away. How was Elon involved in this? Elon's face was unreadable. "Keanu, Jennifer and I were connected in ways you don't know. Before she was with you, she and I were close." His voice was steady, but there was a depth to it, something older than time. Keanu's head swirled, and he gripped the edge of the podium, his mind reeling. "Elon, what the hell are you talking about?" His voice was raw, breaking. "What do you mean you were connected?" Elon sighed, as if he had carried the secret for far too long. "Keanu, Jennifer, and I met years before either of us knew about Christopher. We were both searching for something that would change the world. But we were also both lost, hurting in our own ways. We shared something real." Keanu felt a sharp pang of jealousy, but also something deeper, something that gnawed at him. "Then why didn't you say anything?" Keanu's voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me if you knew her like that?" Elon's expression softened. "Because, Keanu, I couldn't. After everything happened with Christopher, after the world seemed to crash around us, I knew you needed space to heal. I didn't want to add to your pain. And then, when you left the industry for a time, well, I just kept my distance. I didn't know if you could ever forgive me." Keanu's mind was spinning, but now he understood. He looked at the photo again, at Jennifer's face, her bright, hopeful eyes, the smile that always seemed to light up any room she entered. He had loved her deeply, but the wound of her loss had been so sharp, so consuming, that he had buried it under layers of success, fame, and work. But in this moment, standing in front of Elon, he felt it all rush back. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Elon," Keanu whispered. "But what you're telling me, everything I thought I knew, this is bigger than anything I've ever imagined." Elon nodded, his eyes reflecting something unspoken. "I never meant to hurt you, Keanu. I had my own demons, and so did Jennifer. But we all played a part in this story." Keanu stared at him, a flood of memories and emotions crashing over him. His love for Jennifer, the pain of losing her, the hope of Christopher. And now, this revelation. Keanu looked around the auditorium at the faces of the people who had watched them, the eyes full of curiosity, confusion, and awe. He was standing at the precipice of something much larger than himself. "I don't know where this will lead, Elon," Keanu said, his voice steadying. "But I do know that we can't change the past. What we can do is choose what to do with what we've learned. Elon's face softened, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. You're right, Keanu nodded. We've both carried this weight long enough. He looked down at the torn paper, now fluttering slightly in his hand. Now it's time to let it go and start something new, a new chapter. Elon looked at him, and for the first time, Keanu saw the vulnerability in his eyes. You're not alone in this, Keanu. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, taking in a deep breath. He had spent so long carrying his grief alone, thinking that no one could understand. But now he understood that some things were meant to be shared. With a slow exhale, he opened his eyes and looked at Elon. I'm ready. The audience, who had been holding their collective breath, slowly began to clap. The applause was quiet at first, hesitant, but soon it grew louder, more certain. A celebration of understanding, a recognition that sometimes the greatest acts of strength are not in holding on, but in letting go. And as the room echoed with the sound of clapping, Keanu and Elon stood there, side by side, not just as business titans, but as two men who had faced their demons and were finally free to build something new. They didn't have all the answers, and maybe they never would, but they had something more important now, the courage to keep going. And that was enough. As the applause continued to fill the room, Keanu felt a shift deep within himself. Maybe the past would always be with him, but the future was something they could still build. Together, the end.